You've probably seen this collage of pictures from Bethesda's latest RPG. That's an overly charitable descriptor, really, but let's go with it. Latest RPG, Starfield, showing off the game's impressive facial details. This, I want to remind you, was something that Bethesda was so proud of that they dedicated a large portion of the pre-launch video content to, because they were scanning the faces of real people, which will be particularly funny in a moment, but yes, real people, with every wart and imperfection imaginable. Very progressive. You'd think that certain groups would be overjoyed by this. This is humanity in all of its endless diversity. As Starfield is populated primarily by diverse characters, well, you would of course, as always, be mistaken. Because, well, the Starfield NPCs are deeply problematic because, you see, all of them, they're making fun of BIPOC NPCs, and this terrible picture is making a meme out of them. Yes, that's right. The diverse Starfield NPCs are so diverse, they've gone all the way around to being racist again. Because of course they have. How could they not have? It is unavoidable. No matter what you do, not only will it not be good enough, it will actually be bad, as it turns out. So, as the author points out here, facial animations have never really been a strong suit of Bethesda's Softworks, and, you know, I mean, they weren't bad in Morrowind, especially considering the technology at the time, but for some reason, the moment they released Oblivion, they completely forgot about how a human appears, what a human looks like, and instead seems to render everyone as if they're this slowly melting candle, as at any moment you just expect to see the skin just slough off their faces or something. So, if nothing else, we certainly can agree that this is not Bethesda's strong suit. When I initially saw this, my thoughts were probably similar to those of almost everyone else. Jesus Christ, those look bad. The eyes, the motion rigging, it feels like something you'd see in a new dev's first major finished product. Well, I don't know about that. A new dev might actually give enough of a shit to, you know, double check the awful faces, but I get where you're coming from. And not a AAA game that requires 125 gigabytes to run. But then, I just had to pinch my nose as I realized it's not that. It's not that it's merely just bad and hilariously awful faces. No, it is of course racism, as those damnable gamers, well, they're poking fun at the BIPOC people. What was that again? Black and indigenous people of color, I believe, was the BIPOC thing. BIPOC NPCs. I'm not going to continue that joke on YouTube. But it's certainly fitting. I know some people might try to shut this conversation down, because it's just a funny haha Bethesda meme, and why do SCWs have to take the fun out of everything? That's an excellent question. Why do you have to take the fun out of everything? The response is, whatever. I do enjoy the fact that they pretty much arrived at the conclusion now that, you know, there isn't any argument to be made here. I'm not saying this because of any honestly held conviction, any belief, any philosophical framework, anything like that. It's just, I have to complain about literally everything. Somebody's having fun with Starfield, and I must destroy it. To be fair, I sympathize with that sentiment, but still, it's a bit extreme, don't you think? Here's the thing. These pictures, especially the one of the Asian man on the right, you don't get more classically Orientalist than that. Asian man on the right. You know, I can't actually tell who the Asian man on the right is. Is it this guy? He's got one of those little, like, rice ball hats. It might be him, but he's not really on the right. Is it this guy with the big eyes? Or is it, I thought this was a woman, or is it this? Is that the, can you tell? I can't, but details. I don't have the correct color chart to hand, so I'm good at identifying people in that way. We'll see where were very deliberate choices on the photographer's part. Whether or not they had explicit racist intentions doesn't really negate the fact these pictures are contributing to racial biases certain types of games already nurse. See, it doesn't really matter if you didn't intend this in a racist light. It doesn't matter if you just took these pictures of random terrible Starfield NPCs who are already painfully diverse to the point where it's probably a challenge to find a white person in space. But no, that doesn't matter. It still perpetuates racism, you see. Of course. So, this is one of the ideas that everything spreads no matter what. Everything has implications regardless. And this is a natural element of all progressivism, of all left-wing ideology, frankly, and all extremist ideology more correctly, where wherever they gain ground somewhere, they must then immediately expand or burn out, because the entire movement is based on extremism. We've got a recent example of that. You probably remember in relation to Starfield the fact that Nexus mod, first with the Spider-Man game, said that they would remove the mods that removed the pride flag and replace it with the American flag because it wasn't very diverse, and that is their core key virtue. Diversity, ja mein Führer. Wokeism in all as many colours. Later on then, people went like, well, that's a bit stupid. Why are you going to do this? Are you going to do it in Starfield? Yes, they are going to do it in Starfield, because Starfield 2, removing pronouns, is not very diverse. And finally, they've taken this to its logical conclusion. So I was looking at mods for Blackguard? Baldur's Gate, there we go, Jesus, a while ago. And one of the mods I found was this one. Baldur's better aesthetic, bearded dwarves and bald dwergar. So apparently, in Act 3, which I haven't gotten to yet, the diversity just explodes. And because I didn't notice this in Act 1 or even in the little bits of Act 2 I've seen, but apparently in Act 3, bright pink orcs with little pigtails, etc., are everywhere. Yellow dwarves, beardless dwarves, etc. It's just the most diverse nightmare you can imagine, to the point that somebody went, I don't like this. Could we have the aesthetics of the factions in, Dungeons and Dragons, please? Well, that mod is currently under moderation, and I don't know when it was, because I saw this after the 31st of August, so I don't know when, but that is essentially getting yeeted already. So we started with, no, you can't remove the pride flag, you bigot, to, no, you must have the pronouns, bigot, to, you want to enjoy a lore-accurate game? Well, guess what, bigot, yet again, because it must always expand. First, it was you couldn't change this. Now it isn't you can't change that, because it's all political. That is the reason why the pronouns in Starfield matter, because it's a political conquest. That is what it is. Regardless of what anyone tells you, putting they, them pronouns in Starfield, and hell, I'm one of the people who think that the they, them pronouns are not an issue. I don't give a shit if you want to play he, she, they, them, her, man, she, etc, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. And they are hidden as well. You do need to specifically select them. But here's the thing. They are a sign of ideological conquest, because we all know why they are there. We know that they are there because of the overt political narrative of it, because hell, even if you did have a trans person playing the game, which I'm sure you do, they'd probably just select the body type, or gender, if you will, that conforms to what they would prefer, rather than they, them. This is a performative, modern thing, not an actual transgender thing, and I will take that strike for that, YouTube, if you decide to give me one, because it's true. Anyways, racial biases. For instance, this image is now being used as a dog whistle for gamers who do explicitly have racial biases. Is it? Is it really? I think if anything, Starfield should be used as a dog whistle, but you don't have to go far on Steam to see examples of this being used as a comparing these NPCs with the very white-presenting romances in Baldur's Gate 3. My mistake. I thought you were going to say that they were being used by people who were like, look, black people, ugly. No, you're just going to be comparing it to a better game. Because yes, Baldur's Gate 3 is a vastly superior game, particularly in the design of its NPCs. Hell, it's incomparable. It's two different species. It's like comparing a moon to a planet. You simply shouldn't do it. It's dumb and fruitless. Also, by the way, if you're wondering what white presenting means? Well, it's basically SAW for you should dislike this. It's a bad thing. Because, well, they're all rampant racists, and white equals bad in their circles. But what they're really meaning is that they're simply normal, and they can't attack it from any other of their usual angles. They prefer to call it something less overtly racist, of course, like homophobic. But considering that in Baldur's Gate 3, you can bed anything up to and including the local farm animals, it's somewhat difficult to assault from that particular angle. Or better yet, players trying to bring this up only to have commenters say that it's tit for tat for woke game devs intentionally making characters ugly. And there's the goddamn clincher, isn't it? There's the... So you've been demanding realistic faces in videos for oh, it's not representative. Oh, it doesn't... Oh, yeah, hold on. There we go. Right. Yep. You know what? Yeah, no. Yeah, strong, yeah. The bushier eyebrows could be required, but I think you're represented in this. And I think now that we've finally come full circle, to the point where developers are actively making ugly-ass NPCs, you look at that and go, they made the black person ugly. It must be racism. No, it's literally what you've been asking for the last decades. This isn't even tit for tat. This is you digging a very deep hole, falling into it, and then looking up in abject surprise. How have I found myself at the bottom of the pit I dug for others? Who knows? It's a mystery, surely. Of course, the onus is also on Bethesda, because at this point, you'd think a studio with this much funding behind it wouldn't be this reckless in designing and rigging its characters. Oh, they weren't reckless. This was not reckless. In the pre-launch video that Bethesda made, they specifically talked about how they'd made this facial rigging system, where they were scanning real people, Bethesda employees amongst them, to make the most realistic faces possible. They were very proud of it. It was a part of their marketing scheme. Realistic faces. Already then I was like, I don't know if I want realism in my space fantasy. And having seen what realism looks like, again, I don't think I want it. Because yes, you know what? Most people, especially when, like, these are also old characters, or many times fat characters as well. And guess what? Old, fat people tend to not be overtly attractive. I know, it's a weird thing, but there you go. From what I understand, all non-main NPCs, either the ones meant to fill out the game's world material, are procedurally generated. This is why we have black NPCs with hair that simply don't make sense, or Asian characters with skin that looks more jaundiced than actually Asian. Well, that's probably due to the filter they placed over anything more so than anything else, because this skin effect, yeah, that's the filter, rather than the characters themselves. Then, of course, there's the rigging of the eyes and heads, which is so poorly done that it results in the angle seen above. Here's an example in real time. Yeah, no, this one's extreme. So clearly, what's probably happening here, if I were to venture a guess, is that this is like a facial movement. So they had a dude and they face rigged him and they asked him like, okay, tilt your head. And he's like, okay, tilts head. And then they just put that into a random generator set. So they just goes like, okay, position A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. To try and give this a sense of, motion, mobility, and real-lifeness. Except they're Bethesda, and they fail miserably at all of this facial nonsense wherever they try. This kind of design is just lazy at best. Now, there again, we can agree. And woefully reckless at worst. Well, that's where the disagreement enters into again. I'd say the Bethesda devs should have known better, that they should have predicted the worst of their player base would run wild with these kind of flaws. But it's Bethesda who even knows what the stance is beyond make big video game. You know what? You are making a damn fine argument for why I should give Starfield another chance, because by and large, the most of Starfield is simply make big video game. And maybe, if we live in a fantasy world, we might think to ourselves, perhaps they'd learn a lesson. Okay, we were asked to provide diversity, realism. We did it. We built an entire goddamn tool around this. You have any idea how much this costs? How much development time? How much programming time this devoured? How many of our employees we had to make lethally uncomfortable to scan their facial features? And you look at it and you cry racism. It was eminently predictable, if nothing else. Just to be clear, obviously the problem isn't having a diverse world of characters. Really? That isn't the problem? Because here's the thing. Either you have good-looking characters, and all of them, and you'll complain it's not realistic, or you'll have to... Like, again, this is exactly what you asked for. This is the bed that you made, and now you will sleep on the meteorite-sized lump. The problem is making a diverse world in the laziest way possible. Without any thought or care put into creating it, by pulling this kind of shit, all you're doing is inevitably the worst kind of people that spew whatever bullshit they've just been waiting for an excuse to spew. I mean, again, that one Asian guy's face just blew me away the first time I saw it. The teeth in particular are so emblematic of a certain kind of yellow-faced betrayal I haven't seen in this game since the early 2000s. Sometimes I wonder what kind of media these people consume. It's like, oh, I've seen this before. Meanwhile, you know what? The last game I saw, I think I saw something comparable to this, was probably Vampire the Masquerade, and they were the Nosferatu, but details. And to be fair, that's in the early 2000s as well. Maybe we're thinking of the same thing. Sad thing is, even if Bethesda did take more care in its procedural generate system, these kinds of gamers would absolutely 100% still find a way to make fun of the BIPOC NPCs, because they do that with every game. Do they? Where are the people making fun of the Baldur's Gate NPCs on Mars? What are the people making fun of the New Vegas NPCs on Mars, beyond their stupid bugs, etc.? Where are the people just going around, finding the black people in Skyrim and going, click, look, it's a black person. Isn't that funny? No, this isn't oh my god. Okay. I am going to state the single most obvious thing I believe I've ever stated in my entire existence on this green earth, but it is clearly a point that must be made. This character, this one, all of them, they are not ugly because of the color of their skin. They're ugly because they were made deliberately ugly to represent, well... What do you want me to say? You wanted realism, you were given realism, and for some mystical reason, it wasn't enough. Who could have guessed that, eh? But that's why I still put some blame on the Bethesda. In 2023, I like to think these major devs know better. Bigger is better doesn't mean much when it gives fuel to bigots. Bethesda, seriously, we have had enough years of this by now. Perhaps you should actually learn a lesson. Perhaps it is in fact time that some piece of feedback penetrates the titanium brain of the general entertainment industry. Namely, that no matter what you do, no matter how you do it, no matter in which way you do it, no matter with what people you do it, no matter if you literally digitalize the people in your office, will it be good enough? Oh, what am I even saying? Of course it won't penetrate, we're still a good solid 5 years away from that. I look forward to my diverse Elder Scrolls 6. Until next time, thank you all very much for watching, and have a good day. God bless the Mary Sue, always there to provide some entertainment for the masses.